The autumn wind swept through Central Park, rustling the golden leaves that Maya Rodriguez couldn't see but could hear dancing around her feet. She sat on her usual bench near the Bethesda fountain, her white cane resting against her knee, waiting for her sister Carmen to arrive with news she desperately hoped would be good. At 26, Maya had learned to navigate New York City with remarkable independence, but today's challenge was beyond anything she'd faced before. Her younger brother Diego needed surgery, expensive surgery that their family's insurance wouldn't cover. The medical bills had already pushed their mother into debt, and time was running out. "Maya!" Carmen's voice cut through the afternoon chatter of tourists and joggers. Her sister's hurried footsteps approached, accompanied by the click of heels that meant she'd come straight from her job at the marketing firm. "Any luck with the loan applications?" Maya asked, though Carmen's heavy sigh already provided the answer. "I'm sorry, Jimena." They all said the same thing: we need collateral we don't have, or a co-signer with better credit. Carmen sat beside her, and Maya could smell her familiar vanilla perfume mixed with the stress sweat of a long day. "But I did hear something interesting at work today. There's this guy, Alexander Bennett, you know, the tech billionaire who's always in the news." Maya nodded. Even without sight, she'd heard plenty about Alexander Bennett through news podcasts and radio interviews. The 32-year-old CEO of Bennett Technologies had built his empire from nothing, but lately, the media had been obsessed with his personal life, or rather, his lack of one. "What about him?" Apparently, his board is pressuring him to settle down. Something about his playboy image affecting investor confidence. Word is, he's looking for someone to pose as his fiancée for a few months, just long enough to clean up his reputation. The payment would be... Carmen paused dramatically, $200,000. Maya's breath caught. That was more than enough for Diego's surgery and their mother's medical debt. "Carmen, that's crazy. Even if it's true, why would someone like that choose?" "Someone like you?" Carmen's voice turned protective. "Maya, you're brilliant, beautiful, and you have more dignity than half the women in this city. Plus, think about it, you wouldn't be starstruck by his money or status. You'd treat him like a normal person." Before Maya could respond, a commotion erupted near the fountain. Raised voices, the scuffle of feet, and then a man's voice, deep and clearly frustrated. "I said I'm not interested in an interview. Mr. Bennett, just one question about your dating life." Maya recognized the aggressive tone of paparazzi. She heard rapid footsteps approaching their bench, followed by the sound of someone sitting down heavily beside her. The reporters' voices grew closer, their cameras clicking frantically. "Excuse me," the man's voice was quieter now, directed at Maya. "I know this is incredibly forward, but would you mind pretending to know me for about 2 minutes? I'm being followed, and they're less likely to bother someone who's clearly not interested in the publicity." Maya felt Carmen tense beside her, but something in the man's voice, a genuine weariness rather than arrogance, made her decision. She reached out and found his arm, surprised by the slight tremor she felt there. "Of course, Alex," she said naturally. "Did you bring the documents I asked you to review?" There was a moment of surprised silence, then his voice, warmer now. "Yes, they're in my briefcase. Thank you for meeting me here instead of the office." The paparazzi lingered for a few more minutes, but without dramatic photos or quotes, they eventually dispersed. When the area quieted, Maya heard the man let out a long breath. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'm Alexander Bennett, and I owe you a considerable debt." "Maya Rodriguez," she replied, extending her hand. His handshake was firm but brief, his skin slightly cold from the autumn air. "And you don't owe me anything. Those guys were being jerks." "Maya," Carmen whispered urgently, "this is the billionaire you were just telling me about," Maya finished, unable to keep the irony from her voice. "Small world." Alexander was quiet for a moment, then, "You heard our conversation?" "I heard enough to know you have a problem, and coincidentally, I have a problem too." Maya turned toward where she judged his voice to be coming from. "Maybe we can help each other." What followed was the most surreal conversation of Maya's life. Alexander explained his situation with remarkable honesty, his board's ultimatum, the media pressure, his need for someone who wouldn't complicate his life with romantic expectations or greed. Maya, with Carmen's occasional prompting, explained about Diego's condition and their family's financial crisis. "So you're proposing a business arrangement," Alexander said finally. "6 months, public appearances, enough relationship documentation to satisfy my board and the press. In exchange, I cover your brother's medical expenses and provide additional compensation for your time." "That's exactly what I'm proposing," Maya said, surprised by her own boldness. "But I have conditions. First, this stays completely professional. Second, my family doesn't know the real arrangement. They'll think we met naturally and fell in love. I won't have them thinking I sold myself." "Agreed. My conditions: you'll need to attend several high-profile events, meet with my family, and be convincing in public. Can you handle that level of scrutiny?" Maya thought about Diego's pale face in the hospital, about her mother's tears over the mounting bills. "I can handle whatever you need me to handle." As Alexander's driver arrived to take him to his next appointment, he handed Maya a business card embossed with Braille. "My assistant will call you tomorrow with the details." "Maya, thank you. I know this isn't easy for you." After he left, Carmen grabbed Maya's arm. "Hermana, are you sure about this? He seemed nice enough, but he's incredibly powerful. What if Diego gets the surgery he needs and lives a normal life?" Maya interrupted. "Carmen, I've been independent my whole life. I can handle 6 months of pretending to date a billionaire." But as she sat on the bench, listening to the fountain and feeling the weight of Alexander's business card in her palm, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just agreed to something far more complicated than a simple business arrangement. That evening, in her small apartment in Queens, Maya called her mother to share the carefully crafted story she and Carmen had rehearsed. Yes, she'd met someone special. Yes, he was successful and kind. No, she couldn't talk long because he was taking her to dinner tomorrow. As she hung up the phone, Maya wondered if Alexander Bennett had any idea what he'd gotten himself into. More importantly, she wondered if she did. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the marble lobby of Bennett Technologies' Manhattan headquarters, her fingers trailing along the smooth surface of what her guide had described as a water feature wall. The sound of cascading water mixed with the ambient noise of a busy corporate environment. Elevators chiming, heels clicking on polished floors, the quiet murmur of business conversations. "Ms. Rodriguez." A woman's voice, professional and warm. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, Mr. Bennett's assistant. He's ready for you in the executive dining room." Maya had spent the past weeks in a whirlwind of preparation. Shopping trips with Carmen for appropriate clothing, coaching sessions on corporate etiquette, and several private meetings with Alexander to establish their history and coordinate their public story. Today marked their first semi-public appearance together, lunch with his senior management team. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent except for the soft jazz playing overhead. Maya had learned to read people through their breathing patterns, the way they shifted their weight, the small sounds they made when thinking. Jennifer was nervous about something, though she was trying to hide it. "Is there something I should know?" Maya asked as they exited the elevator. Jennifer hesitated. "Mr. Bennett's been different since you two started dating. More focused, calmer. The whole office has noticed. I just hope." She paused. "I hope you're good for him, Ms. Rodriguez. He's a better man than the tabloids make him out to be." Before Maya could respond, they'd reached the dining room, and she heard Alexander's voice. "Maya, perfect timing." His hand touched her elbow gently, a gesture they'd practiced to look natural while being respectful of her independence. In public, Alexander had learned to be subtly helpful without being patronizing, a balance that had surprised Maya with its thoughtfulness. "Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Maya Rodriguez," Alexander said, and Maya could hear the pride in his voice that she wasn't sure was entirely for show. "Maya, this is my senior team, David Chen, our CTO, Marcus Williams, CFO, and Sarah Kim, Head of International Development." The lunch proceeded smoothly, with Maya drawing on her psychology degree and her natural curiosity about people to ask engaging questions about their work. She'd expected to feel out of place among these titans of industry, but found herself genuinely interested in their projects and challenges. "Maya was just telling me about her work with the Foundation for Independent Living," Alexander said as they finished their meal. "She's been developing programs to help people with visual impairments navigate the job market." It wasn't entirely true. Maya had done volunteer work with the foundation, but not the extensive program development Alexander was describing. Still, She'd learned to build on his improvisations seamlessly. "That's fascinating," Sarah said. "We've been looking at accessibility improvements for our software platforms. Maybe we could discuss how to make our interfaces more inclusive." "I'd love that," Maya replied, and meant it. This was exactly the kind of work she'd hoped to do with her master's degree in rehabilitation counseling. After the lunch, Alexander walked her to a quiet corner of his office. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided a view she couldn't see but could feel in the way the afternoon sun warmed her face. "You were incredible in there," he said, and she could hear genuine admiration in his voice. "Sarah's already texting me about setting up consulting meetings with you." "It wasn't just performance, Alexander. I really am interested in that kind of work." Maya settled into one of his leather chairs, noting its expensive comfort. "Speaking of performance, how are we doing?" "Convincingly. More than convincingly." His voice carried a note she couldn't quite identify. "Maya, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. Are you finding this as easy as you make it look?" Maya considered the question carefully. The truth was, she wasn't finding it easy at all, but not for the reasons she'd expected. She'd thought the hardest part would be the deception, the constant performance. Instead, she found herself genuinely enjoying Alexander's company, looking forward to their planned interactions, and feeling disappointed when their dates ended. "Some parts are easier than others," she said finally. "Why?" "Because I'm not finding it easy at all." Alexander's voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. "Maya, I need to tell you something. The other night, at the charity gala, when you laughed at that terrible joke the mayor made, and then whispered to me that you were only being polite, I realized I wasn't thinking about the cameras or the board or any of the reasons we're doing this. I was just happy to be there with you." Maya's heart rate quickened. This wasn't part of their arrangement. "Alexander, I know what we agreed to. I know this is business. But I also know that I've never looked forward to Monday mornings because it meant I'd get to see someone again. I've never found myself calling Jennifer just to ask if you'd confirmed dinner plans. And I've definitely never spent 20 minutes picking out a tie because I wondered what someone would think of it, even though—" He stopped himself. "Even though I can't see it," Maya finished softly. "I was going to say, even though fashion has never mattered to me before." His chair creaked as he shifted position. "Maya, I'm not asking you to change our agreement. I needed you to know that somewhere along the way, this stopped being pretend for me." The silence stretched between them, filled with the ambient noise of the city far below. Maya's mind raced through the past 3 weeks. Alexander's attentiveness that went beyond their public performances, the way he'd learned to describe visual details in ways that painted pictures for her, how he'd started asking about her thoughts and opinions on things that had nothing to do with their arrangement. "Alexander," she said finally, "what if I told you that yesterday, when you canceled our dinner because of your emergency board meeting, I wasn't disappointed because it messed up our schedule? What if I told you I was disappointed because I'd been looking forward to seeing you? I'd say that changes things. It changes everything." Maya stood, her heart pounding. "It also terrifies me." "Why?" "Because in 5 months, this ends. You get your board off your back, I get Diego's surgery paid for, and we go back to our separate lives. If this becomes real—" She gestured between them. "How do we go back to separate lives?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady but intense. "Maya, what if we don't have to?" Before she could respond, Jennifer's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Bennett? The photographer from Forbes is here for your 4 o'clock. "Give us 5 minutes," Alexander replied, then turned back to Maya. "I know this is complicated. I know we agreed to keep it simple. But Maya, I've never met anyone like you. The way you see the world, the way you make me see things differently, I don't want to lose that when this arrangement ends." Maya felt the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. She'd entered this arrangement to save her brother's life, but somehow, without meaning to, she'd begun to build something real with a man she'd never expected to understand her. "What are you asking me, Alexander?" "I'm asking if you'd be willing to see where this goes. Not as part of our deal, but in spite of it. I'm asking if you'd consider the possibility that the best thing to come out of this arrangement might not be what either of us originally wanted." Through the office windows, Maya could hear the distant sound of traffic, the rhythm of a city in constant motion. In her small apartment in Queens, her brother was probably doing his physical therapy exercises, getting stronger each day thanks to the surgery Alexander's advance payment had made possible. Her mother was sleeping better at night, no longer kept awake by medical bills and worry. Maya had gotten everything she'd asked for. The question now was whether she was brave enough to ask for more. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's see where this goes." "But Alexander..." "Yes. If we're going to try to make this real, then we do it honestly. No more pretending, no more performance. If this doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I won't spend the next 5 months wondering what's genuine and what's for show." "Agreed." His voice was warm with relief and something that might have been hope. "Maya." "Yeah. I'm really glad you sat down on that bench in Central Park." As Jennifer knocked on the door to announce the photographer, Maya smiled. "So am I, Alexander." "So am I." 2 months later, Maya woke up in Alexander's penthouse apartment to the sound of rain against floor-to-ceiling windows and the distant hum of Manhattan traffic 40 stories below. The space still felt impossibly large to her. She'd mapped out the main areas over several visits, but there were rooms she hadn't even explored yet. Rolling over, she found Alexander's side of the bed empty but still warm. The scent of coffee drifted from the kitchen, along with the quiet sounds of someone trying not to wake her, cabinet doors closing softly, the muffled beep of the espresso machine. 3 months into their 6-month arrangement, the lines between performance and reality had blurred completely. What had started as business had evolved into something Maya hadn't expected: genuine partnership. Alexander had seamlessly integrated into her world, joining family dinners in Queens where he charmed her mother with his surprisingly good Spanish and played video games with Diego, who was recovering better than anyone had hoped. "Good morning, beautiful," Alexander's voice came from the doorway, followed by the quiet pad of bare feet on hardwood. The bed dipped as he sat beside her, placing a warm mug in her hands. "Coffee with that terrible vanilla creamer you like, because I love you enough to keep buying it even though it's basically liquid sugar." The casual way he said, "I love you," still made Maya's heart skip. They'd moved past the careful boundaries of their original agreement, but the shadow of its end date still loomed over everything they built together. "What time is it?" Maya asked, settling back against the pillows with her coffee. 8:30. "I let you sleep in because you were up late on that conference call with Sarah's team about the accessibility project." Alexander's voice held a note of pride. "How did it go, by the way?" "You were already asleep when I got back from the office." Maya smiled. The consulting work with Bennett Technologies had evolved into something substantial: a comprehensive accessibility audit and redesign of their entire software suite. It was exactly the kind of meaningful work she'd dreamed of doing, and it had started as a byproduct of their fake relationship. "Really well. We're going to present the preliminary findings to the full board next month." Maya paused, a familiar knot forming in her stomach. "Alexander, that's only 2 weeks before our arrangement officially ends." The silence that followed was heavy with everything they'd been avoiding discussing. In 2 months, their contract would expire. Alexander's board had been thoroughly convinced of his reformed image, the media had moved on to other stories, and Maya's family's medical crisis was completely resolved. By every measure, their arrangement had been a complete success. "Maya, we need to talk about that." "I know." She set down her coffee mug and turned toward his voice. "I've been thinking about it too." "What have you been thinking?" Maya had been thinking about a lot of things. About how her cramped Queens apartment felt empty now when she spent nights there. About how naturally Alexander had fit into her family, bringing Diego books about technology and spending an entire Sunday helping her mother plant a garden in their tiny backyard. About how her own goals and dreams had expanded to include possibilities she'd never considered before. But she'd also been thinking about the fundamental inequality in their situation. Alexander was worth billions. Maya was paying off student loans with her freelance consulting income. He lived in a world of private jets and charity galas. Her world was subway commutes and community potluck dinners. Their arrangement had worked because it had clear boundaries and an end date, but real relationships required different kinds of balance. "I've been thinking that I love you," Maya said quietly. "I've also been thinking that love might not be enough." Alexander shifted on the bed, his hand finding hers. "What do you mean?" I mean that our whole relationship started with you paying me to be here. Even though it's become real, that foundation doesn't just disappear. I need to know that I can build a life with you, not just in your life. Maya, money doesn't matter to me. But it should matter to us. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. Alexander, I've never been anyone's kept woman, and I won't start now. If we're going to make this work beyond the contract, we need to figure out how to be equals. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. What would that look like for you? I don't know yet. But I know I need to feel like I'm contributing something meaningful, that I'm not just the woman you fell in love with during a business arrangement. Maya took a breath. The accessibility work with your company, that's given me a glimpse of what I want to do with my career. But I need to build that on my own merit, not because I'm dating the CEO. So what are you saying? Maya had rehearsed this conversation in her head dozens of times, but actually having it felt entirely different. I'm saying that when our contract ends in 2 months, maybe we should take some time apart. Let me establish myself professionally, let you finish cleaning up your reputation permanently. Then, if we still want this, we can try again, as equals. The silence stretched long enough that Maya began to wonder if she'd misread everything, if Alexander's feelings hadn't run as deep as she'd thought. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Maya, I understand what you're saying, and I respect it. But I need you to understand something too. His hand tightened on hers. I don't want to be apart from you for 2 months, or 2 weeks, or 2 days. Not because I'm paying you to be here, but because you make my life better in ways that have nothing to do with contracts or arrangements. Alexander, let me finish. You're right that we need to figure out how to be equals. But you're wrong if you think that means we have to be apart to do it. Alexander's voice gained strength as he continued. What if I told you that Bennett Technologies wants to create a new position, Director of Accessibility and Inclusive Design? What if I told you that Sarah and the board were so impressed with your preliminary work that they want to offer you a full-time position, reporting directly to the CTO instead of to me? Maya's breath caught. Are you serious? Completely serious. And before you ask, this isn't because you're dating me. Sarah specifically said she wanted someone who could challenge our assumptions and push us to be better. She said you were the most insightful consultant she'd worked with in years. The offer was everything Maya had hoped for professionally. Meaningful work, financial independence, the chance to make a real difference. It was also a solution she hadn't seen coming. What about us? She asked. If I'm working for your company, then we'll have to be very professional at the office, Alexander said with a smile in his voice. Maya, I know this isn't the traditional way relationships work. I know our beginning was unusual. But unusual doesn't mean wrong. Maya thought about her parents, who'd met when her father was her mother's ESL teacher, creating their own kind of power imbalance that they'd navigated together. She thought about Diego, whose recovery had been possible because she'd been brave enough to accept help. Sometimes the right choice wasn't the traditional choice. There's something else, Alexander continued. I've been thinking about our contract too, and I want to make some changes. What kind of changes? I want to tear it up. Maya's heart sank. Alexander, if you're having second thoughts, I'm having second thoughts about having a contract at all. His voice was gentle but certain. Maya, I don't want to be with you because of an agreement we signed. I don't want you wondering if my feelings are real or if I'm just fulfilling my obligations. I want to be with you because we choose each other every day without contracts or conditions. The morning sun had shifted, warming Maya's face through the bedroom windows. Outside, she could hear the sounds of the city waking up, traffic building, construction starting, the rhythm of millions of people beginning their days. It was the soundtrack of her life, the background music of the place she'd always called home. Okay, she said finally. Okay to the job offer. Okay to all of it. The job, tearing up the contract, seeing where this goes without agreements or end dates. Maya turned toward Alexander, reaching up to touch his face. But I have one condition. Anything. We tell our families the truth. Not the details, but the fact that we met in unusual circumstances and figured out how to make it work. I'm tired of pretending our love story is traditional when the real story is so much better." Alexander's laugh was warm and relieved. "Deal. Although I have to say, your brother already figured out something was unusual." "What do you mean?" "Last Sunday, when I was helping him with his math homework, he asked me why I knew so much about accessibility software if I just met you randomly in the park. Kid's too smart for his own good." Maya laughed, remembering Diego's suspicious questions about their meet-cute story. "He's been interrogating me too. I think he's been waiting for us to come clean." "Smart kid. He gets that from his sister." As Alexander leaned down to kiss her, Maya marveled at how different this felt from their first carefully orchestrated public displays of affection. This was real, messy and complicated and uncertain in all the ways that mattered. 3 hours later, Maya sat in Sarah Kim's office, officially accepting the position of Director of Accessibility and Inclusive Design. The salary was more than she'd ever imagined earning, the scope of the work was everything she'd dreamed of, and for the first time in her adult life, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. That evening, over dinner with both their families in the private dining room of Alexander's favorite restaurant, they told the real story. Maya's mother cried, not from disappointment, but from pride that her daughter had been brave enough to help both families when they needed it most. Alexander's parents, initially skeptical about the unconventional beginning, were won over by Maya's obvious love for their son and her determination to build something meaningful with her life. "So you pretended to be engaged," Diego said, grinning across the table, "but now you're really together?" "That's right," Alexander replied, his hand finding Maya's under the table. "Are you going to get married for real now?" Maya felt Alexander's slight start of surprise, followed by his fingers intertwining with hers. "We're figuring it out as we go," Maya said diplomatically, though she could hear the smile in Alexander's quiet laugh. Later that night, back in the penthouse that was beginning to feel like home, Maya stood by the windows she couldn't see, listening to the city that had always been her anchor. Alexander came up behind her, his arms encircling her waist. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "About which part?" "Any of it. The original agreement, staying together, the job, telling our families." Maya leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "The only thing I regret is waiting so long to be honest about what I wanted." "What do you want, Maya?" The question was simple, but the answer encompassed everything that had changed in her life over the past 5 months. She wanted the work that challenged her, the family that supported her, the love that had surprised her. She wanted the morning conversations over coffee and the late-night planning sessions for projects that mattered. She wanted the ordinary moments and the extraordinary ones, the struggles and the celebrations. "I want this," she said simply. "All of it. With you. Even though our beginning was pretend." Maya turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. "Alexander, the beginning was pretend. But everything after, every choice we made to stay together, every time we chose honesty over convenience, every moment we decided to build something real, that's been completely authentic." As Alexander kissed her, Maya reflected on the strange path that had brought them together. A desperate agreement in Central Park, a business arrangement that had evolved into partnership, and a fake engagement that had taught them both what real commitment looked like. Sometimes the best things in life started with the worst plans, Maya thought. Sometimes pretending to be something could teach you who you really were. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, pretending to love someone could show you what it meant to love them for real. 6 months later, when Alexander proposed with a ring he'd had designed specifically for her, with intricate braille patterns engraved around a stone she'd never see but would always be able to feel, Maya said yes without hesitation. After all, they'd already proven they could make the impossible work. The rest would be easy.